Hi guys! So this is actually one of my most exciting and most favorite things to talk about. So yay, we're here. um, so you've already done a little bit of work on your dream client and you may have it entirely figured out. It's okay if you don't, like entirely fine. This may help clarify it a bit for you. But now we're going to dive into what I call our dream client pyramid. And this is something that I started creating because I was trained to do dream clients like the same way that pretty much everybody is. It was a slightly different because it was corporate, but it was very much like, you make your avatar, you make your persona, and everything you offer has a different one, which is great. But I realized that the way that we are traditionally taught to do it doesn't really account for everything, and it's an incomplete picture, I guess. If you sell one product, it might be enough for you to work because you're speaking to one person and you're focusing on one exact thing. But for me, when I was taking a look at it, I had to think about, well, how does that explain why I have different levels of working with me, and, why the people coming in are very similar as people at the different other levels or in other ways of working for me, but they may be further along in their journey, or they may have different fears. And I wanted more than just like, let's make another persona and see what that is, because, somebody who works one-to-one with me solely is in a different place in their business, and there's different fears and different goals. And I'm a nerd. I wanted to know the explanation. And what I realized was that the traditional way of doing it is very focused on like the demographics and in some ways just like the base of the story, the foundation. But we need to go a little deeper and look into their energy to understand what's coming up behind it. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Yay! And if you're, like I said, if you're not entirely sure on all of the specifics of your dream client, this may actually help clarify things for you. I like doing the general first as a foundation, but everybody learns differently. Everyone processes energy differently. So it's okay if this kind of fills in the pieces. I think a lot of times we tend to know that we have different offers and know that we want to fill all those offers, but we don't know how to speak to all of the people at those different levels without it feeling disjointed or awkward or just like a lot of work. So this process is how I kind of connect the dots. So it's like I'm still speaking to that one soul, but I'm speaking to them at different levels. So we'll have a handy picture in the homework so you can see the pyramid. But this is what I call the dream client pyramid. And you can think of it as a traditional pyramid. You can think of it as stepping stones, like whatever works in your head. But essentially, the whole pyramid is that same dream client, but there's just 3 different levels of them. And each level is a different energy vibration, which means they're going to be in a different place. They're going to need different ways of working with you, different amounts of attention. And I like to think of it just in stories. They're just along another path or, another place in their journey. They haven't made it to this part of their story yet, which is fine. We all have to start somewhere, and it would be pretty boring if we were all on the same timeline. So I will explain something, because initially I actually thought that it was just like lows and highs aren't necessarily the great words, but we're going to go with it. I was just thinking like, okay, there is a low and a high to your client. And the low would be like the shadow side, like if you're working with astrology, kind of similar to that, but just those aspects that aren't fully evolved, or aspects that may be coming forward as lessons. And they may not even be in a place where they can fully receive and support or receive what you're doing for them. When I was thinking of the high as like the person on paper that you're considering your soulmate client or your dream client, and they're ready to do the work and ready to dive in and invest. And it's just a matter of getting them to trust you and to understand what they need. But then I realized it actually is a little bit more in depth. And with those 3 energetic levels, there can still be shadow traits that are displayed, but those are likely something that's actually going to come forward in the working with you in most cases. There'll be one exception and we'll talk about that, but often like what we're going to be exploring and diving in with them, so it's okay. So, bottom level of the pyramid, I actually wish I had grabbed my pyramids. I have pyramids on my desk for my signifiers. But the bottom level is actually what I call groundwork clients, and they are that exception. So your groundwork clients are going to be clients who know what their big problem is, but they likely don't actually know what their immediate problem is and what they need to focus on next to start moving towards that big problem. They could be in the place of like, I just need to do this one thing and everything's going to click and everything's going to come together. And that's all I got to do. Just that one thing. And often when we're looking at them, we're like, okay, yes, in a general sense, you may just have to do that one thing. But there's really, like, we can break this down into a lot of steps to make it easier and so that we can track our progress and, just to make life more fun. So these clients, the groundwork clients, they aren't going to be the ones that are likely going to dive into your biggest package. Even if they want to, generally, I'm going to say you shouldn't let them. These clients, you're going to want to feel them out. You're going to want to make sure you have very strong boundaries on what they need and what you are willing to give energetically, what you're willing to give time-wise. One thing I will say, as with like all the levels, just going to reinforce this. No one's a bad person or a bad place because they're not at a specific level, just completely different places of their journey. That's all it is. There may be some energetic vibration difference just because they're still tuning to what their purpose is and what they're here to do. And all of that's okay. Like, there's no judgment. But they are still working to reach that version of them that is the top of the pyramid, the crown of the pyramid. They may have more of the shadow traits coming out. They may have a little bit more fear and resistance that you have to work around. And often that fear and resistance going to be things that you're going to want to speak about publicly, just so they can relate and so they can start moving past it before you get them into a sales conversation. Sometimes those things are actually really great things to do as a freebie, like an opt-in. If you can have them, like, even if it's like, go through a meditation that's going to remove this block, or like whatever it is, depending on what you do. If you can have them start doing the early work on some of those shadow traits, they're going to be easier to work with. They're already going to have seen results and they're going to know, like, okay, she's real. This is something that I need. And it's kind of a win-win for pretty much everyone. I will say, because of that, because they have these shadow traits that may be in that resistance that may be a little more prominent, selling to them is going to be a little bit more different than if you're selling to the middle or top of the pyramid, because they're going to need a little bit more coaching involved with it. And you're going to want to be aware. I mean, I want to be aware for all of my clients, but you're especially going to want to be aware, what is the knee resistance coming up? Where do they want to go? And if you make them get more specific, like with what do you want your life to look like right now? What is that? What are they going to consider a success of your time together? And what really needs to shift that they may not be aware of? Because like, what fears, what blocks, what resistance, what are those things that are going to keep them from making progress? And that they may need a little bit of coaching in that. They might need a little bit of just kind of like recognizing that that's what it is, depending on your personality. Could even be calling them out. Depends on your personality. They are definitely going to need to know that you understand where they are, that you recognize where they are and you understand it, that you see where they are stuck or where they're struggling, and you know that the specific problems that come with that, and that you can guide them through it. Because sometimes they even may be at that place where it's like, I don't know what to do, or I don't know if it's possible to get beyond this. I just feel stuck. And that's going to be especially true if they are generators, probably mini generators a little bit. We just want to show them the next step. We don't want to show them the entire full picture because that's going to freak them out. So we want to show them the next step and explain to them how we believe that they can get there, and make sure that we believe they can get there, because if we don't believe that, maybe that's not the right offer for them, or maybe they're not right for us. They may need a little bit of support around beliefs and self-worth, depending on how you're working with them. I like to explain my story with like, here's where I've been, and I understand what this is like because of this story or this experience that I've had. Even if you don't necessarily have the same experience, you could, reference something that you've guided somebody else through, and that'll still let them really clearly see that you do understand where they are, that you do see the next step for them, and that you can get them there. So what they're going to need, typically groundwork clients are going to need shorter, more actionable pieces of everything. So that could be, well, let's back up. We'll say in like marketing, they need little action steps and kind of like to be told really what to do next. They are going to be probably a little bit more lurky and just need to be directed energetically a little bit more. I think things like meditations and challenges and checklists are really good for them because it's really clear what they do, what to do next, and they're getting little pieces of progress along the way with all of those scenarios. They're a generator or a mani-gen, they may want to skip steps, and you may have to make sure that however you're working with them, you're keeping them on focus and you're keeping them working on little itsy bitsy steps so that they're not skipping from, one where they are now to like their big dream, because there does have to be those steps in between. I think I already said, I like challenges in marketing for them because they can get some sort of win out of it really easily. They're going to have some sort of shift through it, but you're giving them like small bite-sized steps that they can take and use. And to me, that is the most essential part of their growth, is keeping them accountable and making sure that it's not so big that they're going to get overwhelmed or start stirring up too much of whatever their resistances and fears are. Because if we stir up too much at once, like, they're not going to want to dig through that. You're not going to necessarily be able to dig through that easily. So the little steps are going to keep it easier, and I'm looking for a word, but I don't have it. We'll just say more attainable for everybody. Okay, so that is the base of the pyramid, the groundwork, base of the pyramid. One thing I will say, your pyramid doesn't have to be even layers. I actually think the middle of the pyramid for most people is going to be the biggest number of people where you put most of the people working with you. So that is what I call the core. And to me, for most of you, I think the core clients are going to be the majority of your clients. It will depend on your structure and how you decide to work with people. Core clients are going to be able to invest more than groundwork clients. They're going to need less attention in some ways than a crown client will. But they do still need like that accountability. Breaking things down into, decent size action steps, going to be good. They're starting to get to the point where they have so much to do and not enough time that, again, like keeping it very focused, action steps, accountability will be helpful. Structure is really the biggest word here. To me, for our standpoint, it is the most essential that we are super clear who the core clients are and exactly what they need, where they're going to be struggling, even again, like some of those shadow traits. Because if you put them into a crown offer, no matter how much support they have, they're still not going to hit where they want to be, unless that offer is like super, super highly structured, because that structure is the main thing that they need. They're likely working on a structure in however you're working with them. So if it's businesses, they're likely working on their business structure and like revising what has happened before and firming it up, getting ready to move to the next step. As I said, the biggest thing that they need is that structure piece. And structure is going to look different to every single one of you. For me, structure looks like lessons. I have to keep lessons involved with what I do so that there is that consistent direction. It's also making sure that there's some sort of like repetition, which I don't necessarily do with everything, but having repetition so there's a process, repeated weekly or monthly. And we'll use this as an example. So there's the 3 lessons a month in the group call, and that's repeated every single month. You know what to expect. You know what you're getting. You just know. And if you're in the Facebook group, then there's the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday posts. Like, you can rely on those. You're going to be prodded and asked for something, given something to respond to. In general, like the core clients just really need everything to be very clear, everything to be, you need to understand what everything includes, all of those pieces. For me, like on a sales page, it's, yes, they need to know the structure, but they also need to know, like, why is all of that there? What is that actually going to do for me? My dog is chewing. Hopefully that's not very annoying. I think challenges are good for everybody, but I think challenges are also really good, especially if somebody is new to you, and a core client, because that's going to give them a taste of the structure, and that's going to give them a way to, start feeling into the momentum that they'll get when working with you. Okay. And then the top of our pyramid is going to be our crown clients. These are your highest level of clients. Again, it's not that these clients are better. They're just further along in their journey. They're going to be looking for higher impact support, I think is probably the best way to say it. They're not going to want a lot of hand-holding. They have the basics down. They just want to do things easier, faster, and in a more structured, not the right word, but in a more streamlined way. So if they have a system, they're going to be fine-tuning it so that it's more sustainable or smoother, or whatever it needs to be for expansion, because that's what they're thinking of, is like, how do I simplify things? How do I make things better so that I have the energy and I have the time and I have all of the resources I need to expand? And so I will say you're going to want to hold them accountable, just because these are the clients that are doing so many things that things just get kind of lost in the ethers, and they need to know that you're going to hold them to what they're supposed to be doing. Accountability just may even be most of what it is. If you're providing something for them, you need to make sure that you're looking at it and that they know it, even if you are looking at it. They may not even necessarily, well, it depends on the program. If it's a quick program, they're going to want to dive in and they're going to be super good on their own. If it's a longer program, it's like that accountability is what's going to keep them moving through it. They're probably not going to want to be walked through answers the same way you may want to with groundwork and core clients, because again, like, time is the most crucial for your crown clients. They want more time. They don't care about like, well, what do you think is causing this? Because they're like, okay, I've done this. Like, I have a foundation. I didn't hire you so that you can psycho counsel me. Unless you're a counselor, I hired you so you can help me with a solution. And they're likely very, very solution focused. So the questions that I always ask when I'm creating something for crown clients is, how can I make their lives easier? How can I give them more time back? How can I speed up whatever they're doing or whatever their results are? And in general, like, how can we infuse a little bit more magic into whatever they're doing? You may have your own questions to add in there too, but those are where I would start. And okay, so in marketing, they are going to benefit from really kind of like living out that story in a way. It's seeing like what other people have done. Like they need to be in the story. I like case studies as a really great example because they can go through the entire process, especially depending on if they need a lot of detail or not. They can kind of go through and see like, okay, well, this is where this person was. This is where they ended up, or like even this is what happened for them while they were, working with you. And this is what happened afterwards. And you can even go a little bit further afterwards so they can see like, well, this is how, all of that is still being implemented, how it's still affecting growth, et cetera, et cetera. Just because they do need more than just a normal testimonial, like a testimonial that shares like, okay, you've had great results with me. It's good. But unless they know the person, they may just be like, okay, that's awesome. But they need something a little more in depth. Video testimonials do work lovely for them because especially if it's like somebody walking them through the process of what it did look like to work with you and what results were achieved along the way, instead of just, having good things. Interview testimonials, which I don't necessarily see done a lot, could be really good for this because they're seeing both, your interaction with somebody, but they're also seeing, you can ask questions about the journey, the process. What does it look like to dive in? What results were given? Of course, you can always give them regular testimonials with results. Tangible results are going to be more effective than just like the experience, just because they're likely very focused on what is happening, how that's going to increase things for them, and the investment is going to be higher because they are expecting a different level of results. They might start off in a lower level to get a taste of you, to feel out how the two of you work together. They're a fast action. They may just need to, just watch a couple of videos to get on a call and gauge your energy. That is going to mostly be checking that you walk your talk and checking that you can direct them and lead them. If you can't lead them, they're not going to be sure how you can create results for them. So if you're in a call and you're not the one directing movement forward in that conversation, if they're the ones controlling the shots, either A, they're not aligned for you, or B, you need to get back into control so that you make sure that you're leading them. So that's probably their big word. While Core's word was structure, the crown can be leading. I will say they're going to pay more attention to the final details of how you present yourself. And again, that's going to be the leadership piece, to make sure that everything that you say is trustworthy. And I guess I'll give you an example. So, and like when I look through people's things, I often look to make sure like, okay, is what you're saying backed up by something? And it can be something kind of minor. But if somebody is telling me constantly that they help their clients get, $20, $30, $50,000 months, and, they're making the same, and then I look at their photos and it's all like in a bathroom with crappy light, I'm not going to, like, even if they are making the money, they could show me a bank account and I wouldn't necessarily trust that, because it's like, why aren't you presenting yourself in a way that is on the same vibration with what you're saying? And that's more of what they need. They need, however you are presenting yourself, to be on the same vibration as the experience that they expect. So that's the biggest thing, or not necessarily the biggest, but those are the biggest things to focus on for the crown clients. If you don't know whether someone is, what level they're on, okay, and I have a few tricks. So the biggest thing, or not biggest, the initial thing that I would do is just to kind of ground back in yourself, close your eyes, and then ask to tap into their higher self. And you can see how connected they are to their higher self. That's going to tell you a bit in general. I take a look at the cord. How long is it? Does it look healthy? What color is it? Sometimes you may even get a picture of like how many cords are attached to them, and that can tell you things. They might be very close to their higher self, and if so, they're probably higher on the pyramid. They may be further away, then they're probably a groundwork client. You may see blocks, and just know that in this time, it's not your responsibility to clear that block, because you're just checking in to see where they belong and what's aligned for them. You can tell them a block is there if it feels right, but I wouldn't put energy into clearing it, because there isn't that A, consent, but B, you wouldn't be receiving anything back, and doesn't always feel good. I also like to take a look at like their energetic body. What looks heavy? What looks light? Sometimes groundwork clients tend to have more cords coming out of like their root and sacral. I may even see, I don't want to say, I guess like heavier vibration colors on the lower half of them. Their solar plexus, I'm trying to find like good words. Good words are tarnish. Tarnish is probably the best word for the solar plexus. It might be even like dusty. And that's probably more related to my energy and what I do for people. So you may notice different things. Since I tend to amplify people and amplify their power, to me, I think of our power coming from our solar plexus. So if you aren't very connected to your power, to me, that's going to look like dusty and tarnished and maybe even like just rusty or stuck, not really spinning. So it could be a completely different chakra that you're looking into or a different center in them. I would experiment and just kind of tap in to see what does make the most sense for what you do and how you work with people. When you look at people, are there specific areas of their energy that you are guided to look at? And those are likely going to give you a little more direction of, what does a groundwork client look like versus a crown client for you. And once you know, I would keep it, even if it's just a friend or, just somebody in your Facebook feed, I like to associate a person with each level of that pyramid so that I can connect that energy to like, oh yeah, okay, they feel like, I'm just going to throw out a random name, like Amy Sue. They feel like Amy Sue. So I know that they are this level. And it's almost like an energetic touch point for me with like, this person feels like that person. So I know if they are asking about how to work with me, they're probably on this level. And then I can gauge, like ask questions, probe a little bit where they are, how much they're making, that kind of things, look at their human design chart and then gauge, okay, you're in between these levels. You feel more like the person related to this level. So we're going to go there. When you're working with the different levels, that's where it gets fun. So before you do have anything set up, I like to think about, again, those shadow traits, the typical fears and resistance that's going to come up at each level of their growth. I also like to note general energy that I'm going to get from clients, which if you've already, connected and had like major signature person for each level, you're going to know. On a conversation, I have these like pinpoint traits that I can gauge where somebody is because of how their energy is, how they're speaking, what they talk about. And so for me, a crown client probably just wants to get to the point. They're talking really quickly. They're inspired, they're excited, likely telling me about lots of other projects that they're doing. Those projects are already in motion, but they want me to have a full picture of what their business looks like and what's going on for them. They know what they're doing. They know who they're serving. Even if they're pivoting, they still have like that depth of like, okay, I know why this didn't work and I know what I want to work next time. On the flip side, groundwork clients are often going to talk about the past with like, this is what I did. This is what, everything that I did to make this work. This is why it's not working. The conversation is going to be at a slower pace in general. You may even need a second one because they may need time to think in between. I mentioned this earlier. If it's a groundwork client, I'm not going to talk to them about their like big fabulous down the road goal, even if they think it's immediate, because their energy isn't going to be able to support that. Their energy is literally going to shut down if I start talking to them about, say it's making 6 figures or multiple 6 figures. Their energy needs to be able to feel into what feels safe. And you're going to have to try to gauge what is that safe goal for them. And safe doesn't have to mean like immediately attainable or super comfortable, but it's how much can their energy actually take and actually receive. Which you can tell them about blocks that you see coming up for them or what you see that they need to focus on, and however you're working together is going to take them there and how it's going to clear any of those blocks and resistance. But you're picking another goal for them to start on. For all of them, I like to talk about where they are and, paint them the picture of how you're going to get to where you want to be. Especially for the core and the groundwork, like I want a really clear picture, A, so I can understand, but B, so they can understand. So say they have a money block and they can tell me why. They're often going to tell me why. And, it's family life stuff at home when they were a kid. And, they've done the basics. They're going to tell you everything they've done. They say they've journaled, they've done meditations, etc. So you have to be able to tell them what you're going to do that's different. And maybe it is doing some of the same things, but having that accountability. But they need to know exactly what is going to be different, what steps they're going to be taking, what's creating really that shift and transformation for them. Which I think is entirely fair. Like our clients should know how we're going to help them and why we believe that we're going to help them. That's my own opinion, but I think that's the way it should be. So our crown clients, they are going to need to know that there's going to be things coming up that need to be healed and how you can support them through that, but also that some of those things may not be the main focus and it may be distractions coming up to bring them away, like resistance that brings them away from the action and movement and momentum that they want. And that is more what I would focus on there. So that is a general, like, how it's different when you work with them. And of course, it's going to be different when you're making sure that you're attracting them into the right packages. And we've talked about this a little. The biggest thing there is going to be how you're presenting those packages and, the words that you're using. And we'll talk about this more in the next upcoming weeks. But the words that you're using, the structure of the package, all of those things. So for each level, we'll do some of this in the homework. Now you're going to want to know what are the things that you're helping people with at that level? How can you help them? What does a person on that level look like? You can even go into are you attracting specific astrology signs or human design types to particular levels? I personally do, and it's usually pretty interesting. Also, how do they want to connect with you? What type of relationship do they need? What type of support do they need for growth? So typically I think of groundwork clients needing self-study, not simply because they don't have the time and necessarily the investment to do something more intensive. Group programs are going to be good for them because they can get a lower cost, and they actually tend to do really great from having that group energy and being supported by other people who are moving through similar things. And of course, everybody's going to be on a slightly different level. But having that, core clients, I like in group hybrid programs where they get the group, but they also get some one-to-one time for me. Sometimes high level or the crown can benefit from that, and that would be it have to be small and intimate, or at least any group that you can make feel very intimate and like you're engaged with them, and they would have to get one-on-one time as well. Often they may want solely one-on-one because they want to move things faster. It may not be right for them depending on their human design. Just as a general note, we'll talk about this when we talk about packages, how we structure things. Like I typically like projectors to be in some sort of group. And the only kind of like exception to that would be if I have a one-to-one where I bring in other experts and they have access to all of us, then that way I feel good. But if it's just them very isolated, their energy doesn't have a lot to respond with, and they're just kind of like sitting there amplifying nothing, that's not good. So I want them in groups. Where like a manifester might do better on one-to-one, because once they get into their groove, they're going to like fly through things, but also a group can help them get into their groove. So it's going to depend on what level they're at. But I would just think about like, how are you presenting yourself? How are you communicating through them? For me, like crown clients don't often even get on the phone. I don't do a lot of phone sales anyway, but they don't often get on the phone because speed. They want to just like, is this right? Especially if they've already been in my sphere. If they are newer to me, then yeah, they're going to want to kind of like gauge everything. But they often are going to come through, which is like Facebook message or, you know, a Voxer, where a ground client, you know, they very much want the sales page. They, you know, may even want to do a discovery call and really make sure that they understand how this is going to help them, and being very clear on the tangibles, as opposed to like the tangibles of what's going to shift. It's the tangibles of how it's going to shift. So feel free to ask me if you have questions. I love exploring this. In our homework, we are going to work on getting clear on those energetic levels so that we can start making offers that support them, and being super clear on who we're attracting in before we start the attraction process, because no more getting the wrong clients, no more getting people who don't understand what they need entirely or how you're going to help them. This is going to smooth all of that out. So I can't wait to dig in and see all of your energetic levels. Yay! Bye!